Hello and welcome to Movie of the Year, the only podcast with the science and the screaming to determine the best movie for any given year. This season, we are focusing on 1973. The groovy 1973s, baby. I am your host, Greg. Joining me on this quest to talk about a very special movie, The Long Goodbye, are three contestants, because yes, this is a game show. I'm going to be awarding points for correct answers, hilarious comments, but only hilarious. If a little funny, no. Hilarious, you got it. Or things that just confirm my worldview, because that makes me feel very, very comfortable in a lot of ways. Not joining me is the champion from last show. Nate won the last show, and he said, I am retiring the champion, never to be on the show ever again until you guys invite me. Taking his place as sort of interim champion is going to be Mike. How you doing, Mike?
I love to take credit for somebody else's wins. I'm here. I'm good. I'm well rested. Took a couple weeks off. Went to film school. I'm back.
Nate revealed that he was filling in with you because he is also of Sicilian descent. Did you know that about him?
I did. We've recorded a whole podcast about what it's like to be Sicilian.
Just about
over on Nate's podcast.
Check out Nate's podcast.
It's called A Vague Idea.
A Vague Idea. Also joining us, the person that lost last time, but
came in second place.
Came in second place is Ryan. Ryan, how did you approach the week with your loss?
I mean, a couple things happened last week, Mike or Greg. I had infinitely more points than Mike.
Yeah,
so
that's true. Mike kind of did not post.
Right.
No points for Mike. And then also joining us because this show is based on this movie is based on a book. We brought in somebody who has an expertise with books, and it's of course our good friend Books. Hello, Books. Welcome to the show.
Hey, I'm so glad to be here. I thought we were talking about the book only, though. So
only the book.
Yeah, a little underprepared.
But no, unfortunately, we're going to talk about the movie instead
right.
because that only takes a couple hours to watch. Reading a book, Books, you can be the judge of this, but reading a book, 2 years.
Oh yeah,
3 years,
easily.
Yeah. By the time you get to the end, it's like, man, I don't even remember the beginning of this thing.
You're a whole new person too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've seen the world. We are doing 1973's The Long Goodbye. Books, do you have any experience with this movie at all? Do you have any prehistory with this movie?
I knew one actor.
Elliot
Gould is the actor that I am not very familiar. I've seen more than one thing of him, like with him in it.
Is it the Gellers? The patriarch of the Gellers?
It is the patriarch of the Gellers.
Yeah.
It is Ocean's 11. That is my Eliot Gould's.
The full extent.
Yeah,
here.
that's my knowledge. And I wasn't even a thought when this movie came out. So
none of us were. Don't
Yeah.
try to act
I'm
like
sorry,
the rest.
Not like
aged
these three
it.
pieces of shit.
Even your exceptionally old co-hosts are not
this. Okay,
not
that's good.
quite this old. And in fact, it's one of the weird things about watching these movies in 73. It's just like, these people aren't around anymore. Like, some of the very young people are now very old people, but for the most part, you like see someone in a movie who's like 60, and you're just like, yeah, that one.
Yeah,
you're gone, man.
Greg, your favorite thing is walking by when somebody's watching an old movie and pointing out pets that are dead?
Yes.
And this is Morris the cat, the Morris the cat.
Yeah.
That is in this movie.
It died.
No.
Dead forever.
The dog is definitely still around. I refuse to accept that. People could die, but
some of the beaches aren't even here anymore. But the rest of us, I feel like we had a little bit of history, and like we kind of chose this season in part because of excitement about this movie. Mike, you have history with this movie, right?
Yeah.
You have
first
beef?
watched it. Huh?
You have beef with this movie?
I have beef with this movie. It stole my girl.
It's on site with
And
this movie.
It is. Yeah, I love this movie. I love noir films in general, and anybody who fucks with little, and like so many things, they started to fuck with it way earlier than we think. So many people are like, in the 2000s, so-and-so. No, it's always early. The minute a genre is formed, the next person comes out and is like, oh, I'm going to start fucking with that genre. I fucking love the Phillip Marlowe movies, and yeah, Eliot Gould is a
Okay,
sexy,
so you're
sexy
a
man.
fan of like sort of the whole canon, and you like this entry into it.
Oh, yeah, I love this entry.
Okay, because I think that's where some people might have questions. Ryan, do you have any history with this movie?
I do. Similar to Mike's. I think that Mike and I have done a podcast way back in the day about it. And I
Don't
think
talk about that podcast, Ryan.
that was the first time that I'd ever watched
But we
it.
sing about it.
But yeah, like this is, I would say that my favorite type of movie. Congratulations,
I'm
Greg.
out. Dude, early lead for the Gregster here, right? I pull in front.
LA noir and meta movies are probably my two favorite genres. To just get in the
The video
bathtub with
game
these
LA
two,
Noir.
with these two things is just like, this is up my alleyway.
Deep up your alleyway.
Up in there, and then like turns the corner and does a little tickle.
And did watching it this time, first off, books, what were your general thoughts?
About watching it or before watching it?
No, tell us
now
all
that-
your thoughts, not about the movie, before watching the movie.
One, I'm born. I'm like, what the hell is everything?
This is fucked
Oh
up.
my
Not
God.
even my like brief research.
Overwhelmed by sensory information.
It's a wild time.
But having seen the movie generally, without getting into any specifics, did you enjoy it? Was this a good time at the movies for you?
This was a good time. Yeah, I enjoyed it. I think I didn't I'm not very familiar with the genre as a whole. So this is really like me dipping my toes, not just into this, but the genre as a whole. But I enjoyed it. I always test a movie by like how willing I am to pause when I have to go do something else.
Okay.
And I didn't want to pause all the time.
So you just let it run.
Well, I just unfortunately
I'll miss this scene.
So like you just go to a store and then the movie's still going.
still going.
Shit,
you know,
I have to go
gotta-
work for 8 hours. You know what? Let it run.
It's fine. But no, like my son would start crying, and I'm like, oh, okay, pause it really quick, go address what he would need, and then like how willing I am to step away, like take a break. I didn't want to. I didn't want to leave my son crying. I'm not a horrible person, but I didn't want to,
You know what?
The old MacDougal.
That's a point for you.
I think that's an interesting thing, though. Like, you don't want Watchmen to be anybody's first comic, right? Like, you want them to build up a foundation so they watch the Watchmen, or until they read the Watchmen. And so I think Mac is going to have a different perspective on all this of like, what is this actually parodying and why?
Yeah, because there's the commentary, but if it's kind of your first, but something we'll get into it. But I think that it's still a good representative sample of the genre itself.
And also, it's easy to build around. Like, you could be like, well, I get what the other movies are like because of context clues, right? And like The Simpsons or whatever.
well,
Right, if you've
Nora's
lived
not
life
something
and culture.
like not talked about,
Right.
So yeah, you get enough based off of. And I've seen clips and things like that. I'm not completely.
I've seen clips.
I've seen something. Now, I'm very naive, but not that. I haven't lived in a cave.
Mike and Ryan, did you enjoy it as much as previous viewings? Did you enjoy it more? Is there something about the scrutiny of the show that changed your viewing at all?
Liked it more, and I can't tell you the last time in my life for a podcast or not. A movie ends, and I just hit play again.
Oh, hell yeah.
Friends, I bought this movie on Apple TV because I'm like, well, I'm going
Nice.
to just watch this like annually probably.
That is a long goodbye. Like, can't even say goodbye. I honestly do have a complicated relationship with this movie. I keep watching it, and it keeps changing for me of like how much I don't want to say respect it because I respect it a lot, but like how much it's delivering truly as opposed to how much it's delivering as like a prank.
Uh-huh.
That's what keeps changing for me, and I enjoy the prankishness of it, but I don't respect it as much as how thick I once thought it was. So that keeps changing for me.
Yeah, it's interesting though because it's sometimes where it feels like it is being a satire in the truest way. It still feels like it's taking an attempt at being robust otherwise. Like I don't think that it ever gives itself over to parody in a way that doesn't respect the genre or doesn't respect what they're doing.
Right, but I do think that like there are these people who like if you look at Altman's McCabe and Mrs. Miller, or if you look at Zaz's Airplane, these are movies that do exactly all the way through exactly what they're supposed to do. And this one kind of, to me, sort of dabbles in all fields and like has its cake and eats it too. And that's sort of what I want to get into. And like, what are its feelings on 1973?
Yeah, we're going to have a chance to talk a lot about Altman because I think that this movie is pressing up against his natural tendencies, which are to let things just run and see what you end up getting. And then this is kind of a dense story. And so those are sort of tensions that push against each other. And I think that at times maybe the movie gives a little bit under those pressures.
And I think he learned from his past of watching movies that when he says that the story doesn't matter, he learned it from watching other Phillip Marlowe movies from the past.
Ah, okay. I like that.
Ryan.
I like how if your job is to make movies, then part of your homework for that is to watch movies. That makes making movies very tempting to do. When we come back, we are going to jump into some specific questions. Director Robert Altman said he wanted Phillip Marlowe to wake up in the 1970s, a man out of time, and just wander through the twists and turns of The Long Goodbye. Eliot Gould seems to have taken this to heart because he crafted the wanderen-est performance in the history of Hollywood. We start with him waking up at 3 a.m. and heading to his kitchen, and he never really loses the energy of someone stumbling around in their robe and slippers, trying to remember what exactly it is they're supposed to do with this time, muttering about how nothing is where it should be and no one keeps this place nice anymore. Slouching through Southern California and parts of Mexico, Marlowe truly travels the highs and lows of 1970s masculinity, while sort of shrugging at women and muttering to himself, "It's okay by me." All while trying to separate friend from foe and being haunted by a titular song. The most obvious difference between The Long Goodbye and the film noir of the 40s is Gould's Marlowe. What do we make of Eliot Gould's performance, and how he ain't your daddy's bogey?
He does not solve his problems with his fist first. He seems in every situation to be like, I bet I can slur my way
At one point, he's
out of
just
this
like literally
situation.
like, don't punch me.
Yeah,
Do not
he
do
says
physical
don't
violence
don't
to this
punch me.
person.
Come on.
Well, that and anytime that he's in a room with a ton of danger, he still has, for as long as he possibly can, that face of like, probably nothing's going to happen.
Yeah.
Probably
When the knife
not.
comes down towards the end, he's looking at it like, so is like a bang flag going to come out of the switchblade? Or like,
Which, what an impressive trick that would be.
It's also impressive that he's able to run his mouth as consistently as he is
Yes.
without anyone actually, taking that next step.
It feels like he is certain that he is never going to be punched in the
Yes.
face, except for that one moment where he screams out, "Please don't do that."
I almost thought of him as like Peter Parker from early 60s or late 60s comics of like, we're seeing not his word balloons, but his cloud balloons.
Uh-huh.
yeah.
Like
Yes.
people pay attention to him so little and he talks so much that we have to be just seeing an inner outer monologue.
Yeah, it does feel at times like he can't actually be saying what he's saying, or that the volume at which we hear it is not representative, which is something that
Right.
happens a lot in, I guess, Robert Altman movies, right? Like
Right,
the way
yes.
he does the dialogue is you can't mic it
And-
correctly.
That's why I love the character of Augustine, the gangster. Is he seems to be just like Hot Priest knows all of Fleabag's breaking the fourth wall.
Yeah, like,
Marty
hey,
Augustine
what are you
is
looking
the one
over
guy.
there? Yeah.
Marty Augustine's the one guy who hears everything, and you can see Marlowe be like, "Oh fuck, what?"
But the sort of like walk of Gould, his like slouched sort of like slumping forward. How much is that the character itself? How much is that him being, I don't know, like so out of place and not really what you expect?
I think that, like, okay, so here's my history on the whole shebang. I've read one Chandler. I've seen a bunch of movies.
Bangs.
And including the long Goodbye. And then I feel like that Chandler was just adapted into being the 40s version of Stallone or Schwarzenegger, right? Like this is what action heroes are like in this time. And so he was like quick with the quip, and he was sarcastic, and he like always had the thing to say. Based on what I've read about Marlowe in the books, he was a little more schlubby. He was a little more like dirty, I guess. And then, so Gould is sort of, and Altman are echoing back to that, but also echoing back to like that bogey character would not work now in the 70s. Also, with the big wake up of the Rip Van
Marlowe
thing, is this Barbie? Is this the Brady Bunch movie of like, oh, I'm now awake. I have now transformed. I've gone into a new dimension.
I do feel like there's something to the fact that, I mean, it's supposed to be like this character woke up in this time, and that literally is where we start, is with him waking up. And it's like he wakes up at a weird hour, and he never seems to quite recover from the fact that like he's groggy from waking up.
Being groggy sucks.
it's worse than being sick.
Is the character, you mentioned something, Ryan, that in the book or in the other versions that Marlowe's very quippy, and certainly like we have a long history of our action heroes being super quippy. Is the character in this movie quippy, and is it supposed to be that the character is bad at it, or is Eliot Gould kind of bad at it?
I think he's quippy if you can catch it. Like, if you can cut the pre-mumble and the post-mumble from the quip, then you might get a quip. But for the most part, he's like... I
mean, like, he walks away from the nurses, and he's like, ladies, man, crazy ladies. Yeah. Like, that's not anything.
He's talking unhomed. Like, that's how he sounds the entire time.
Mike, in your experience, is Marlowe, as a character, is he usually very quippy and clever?
No, well, that's... No, because I think nobody became quippy or clever until the 80s. There's like, anytime you go back and you watch, maybe it's just we are out of time. It always sounds not good, and that's what I love about him. Just like he does remind me, Ryan, you said is 1960s Spider-Man of like I know you're trying to be quippy, but mostly you are just filling space and being annoying, and I get why people kind of don't like you sometimes. And that I've liked that so much better than a yippee-ki-yay motherfucker of him being like, yeah, well, it says you. Like it's always just like, gotta say something, and it'll confuse you so you think I won, as he knows he never really wins a verbal exchange.
Or I can at least see young Mike, watching both of these movies, Die Hard and Long Goodbye, and being like, these are both equally ridiculous, right? Like,
yes.
Why would either one of these attract any woman whatsoever?
Do we feel like he really is a man out of time, like 50 years later? So we are out of the time of the 70s by quite a bit, and then totally removed from everything except the idea of the 40s and early 50s. Does Marlowe ring to us as a modern audience as, wow, this guy is really just out of joint with how the times seem?
No, maybe it's just me being out of such a perspective, but no, he didn't. He seemed... to me, it kind of... I don't even know where I'm going with this.
Because it seems like I'll tell you one thing that I think that we may not clock in exactly the same way is like how much dedicated to health food everybody is, or like health culture. And that is like supposed to be a big jump from the... And
he's a chain smoker.
Yeah, and he is like a chain smoker, constantly smoking all the time, which I think was still like legal and okay to do then, or I know it was, but nobody else does. Like, you don't see anybody else smoke in the entire movie.
It's early on, but where it notices is when he gets into the grocery store and he's like, well, I should light up because I'm in a new area now. She's like, you fucking monster.
There's food in this room. Like, what are you doing in smoking in the grocery store? I think that, like, the way that the smoking goes is like, yeah, I think that he is sort of he's in a different movie than the rest of the people, and I think that's what is important.
And so
because it doesn't feel time based to me, because he does seem more progressively thinking, even though it's not what we think today. But he does he is more accepting of a lot of people's lifestyles. He's not a man's man, so that's why he doesn't feel like bogeys Marlowe, because he's not like, haha, I will punch you now. Like,
let me ask you this then about his catchphrase when he says that's okay by me. Is it more, I'm being honest, that is true, it's okay by me, or like, this is just what I have to say to these new people?
I think it's honest, because everybody comments on his neighbors and he's like, yeah, they're just some crazy girls, let it go, man. Like, he just doesn't care.
See, there is like this implicit sort of like idea that he has to say it's okay, and not from the stance of like he has to permit it, but the idea that like it doesn't have to be okay by you or not. There's so many things where he's just like, yeah, it's okay that woman acted like that, and it's like, well, it's not for you to decide whether it's okay or not. And so they're like, it is a little bit of it is like, oh, well, why does he bother to say it? Like, it doesn't have to be okay or not okay by him. But he's so often, it seems like he's judging everything to be fine, but we don't need the judgment at all, I guess I'm saying. Let's talk about his neighbors, because the neighbors, how do we, in a modern way, view the characters of his neighbors as like what the movie is trying to achieve and what it's trying to like poke fun at, and whether or not it actually achieves that?
Honestly, Greg, as me right now, I found them to be naked.
They were naked as heck, yeah. Like, you definitely never lose sight of the fact that you're not angry that you're seeing them naked. You know, that like whether or not, like, you're evaluating the whole time, and you're like, but you're like all the characters that go into his apartment. There's so many characters that go and stand in his apartment and then have conversations and spend the entire time looking out the window, looking at the women on the balcony. But what are they in the movie? Like, are they supposed to just be? Are they just a stand-in for hippie culture?
That's what I read it as. It's just their hippy dippy Hollywood. You still see like these magic crystal shops on Hollywood Boulevard today.
Yeah.
So it just feels like there's a part of Hollywood that's never aged out of that, and it felt like that.
And he has no attraction to them. He doesn't look at them.
Right.
He doesn't see them. In fact, he doesn't really seem to see many women.
That's why I think that he's out of time, is that he is not ever pissed that it's not still the 40s, and he's not ever pissed that it is now the 70s.
Yeah.
Right? He just floats through this middle thing of like, look, Marlowe gonna be Marlowe, no matter when it is. And you guys have to figure out what you're going to do because of that. And Marlowe, like the instincts or the traits of Marlowe just always stand, which is like, I'm a dirty person. I'm not great, but also there are black and white rights and wrongs.
Yes. And if you cross that, then we're going to have a problem. And that leads into our next point. And so we'll stop it there and take, Mike, what would you say, the quickest of breaks?
That's how I hope it will be.
Let's take the quickest of breaks and then come right back. Let's go shopping. So we all get to run through 1973's The Long Goodbye, grabbing whatever we want and throwing it into our huge, comically sized shopping cart. And first up, our first draft pick is going to go to me. Wow.
What?
Very exciting.
That's crazy.
Very exciting that I get to go first. It just happened that way. I just drew lots and I got to go first. And I'm going to choose the 1971 Ferrari 365 GTS that Terry Lennox drives.
You probably could have had this in the third round.
A Ferrari? No, because Mike knows that I like cars now, and so now I have to very closely.
I've learned one thing about Greg in my 20-year friendship.
He likes Cars 2, and Cars 3.
A lot of good cars in this movie. All the main characters drive convertibles. Even the Jeep that she drives at the end doesn't have a ceiling or a roof. I think that's just so that it's easy to film.
Yeah.
Right? All right, up next is Ryan. Ryan, what do you want to grab from this movie?
Greg, I'm going to take a 1973 supermarket. I want the whole kit and caboodle.
The Thrifty?
Yeah, I want the building. I want all of the aisles, and I want that food to be exactly as it is, so I can choose to eat. Probably not the produce.
Yeah.
But some of the other stuff I can eat.
Yeah, some of those like old Fritos.
And I love the design of the wrappers. Like I think that it's so cute.
Very old school.
Yeah.
So you want these supermarket.
There's one type of Doritos. It's just like plain Doritos.
Uh-huh.
Not gonna get confused.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, I bought the wrong Doritos again. Get some mellow yellow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, dude. Very nice. I think that's a good choice. Gonna get some Curry Brand cat food.
Yo,
You can't get that. They are out of that.
I
But
can't get curry.
That
cat
store
food.
is a Thrifty, so that means you can get some of that ice cream, get some of that chocolate
Yeah.
malt crunch.
Yeah.
It's the best flavor.
The best flavor.
Chocolate
yeah.
malt crunch.
Yes.
From
No,
Thrifty. From
Thrifty?
Thrifty ice
Best
cream.
you
flavor.
fucking idiot! Shit.
That
Are
is
you
the
serious?
consensus best flavor.
Malted is disgusting. It tastes like
That's a
fucking
point.
chocolate vomit.
And you know what? I also said it. So
Damn it! Why did I say neutral?
why did I ask for beige ice cream? All right, McKenna.
All right, I might be breaking the rules on shopping spree. Are there any rules on shopping? There's like no rules, right?
Not when Greg
It's
is
more
honest.
like you build your case, and then if it's
Yeah.
a good case, yeah.
Okay, so I want the security guard.
Well, we don't like drafting people
Okay, we don't draft
because
people.
of slavery, but
Yeah, that's what I felt like should be a rule on that. But I
oh,
felt
but you
like
want that guy? You want to hire that guy
I want to
Yeah,
hire him.
yeah.
Yeah,
To
to
like,
just do impressions in your house?
well, no, I want him to stand out front of my house and prevent all of the people who try to like come to my door
He doesn't
selling
really
solar panels.
prevent anything, though.
No,
he kind
I
of think
feel
you just
like-
have to. It's like instead of riddles 3, you just have to like listen to impressions 3, and then you always get to go by.
Yeah,
him.
but those people are like paid by. They're not going to sit and listen to a lot of impressions. They're going to like walk away.
This is a
They're
paying
gonna-
job. So
Yeah.
I think that McKenna's also drafting the money to pay him for the rest of his life.
and the little
Yeah.
booth probably.
And the little
'cause that
booth,
Yeah,
booth-
I want the
yeah.
booth.
You gotta give him a
I
booth.
want him. I want impressions when I want them, and then I also want everyone who dares to come to my door
I don't
I-
to
understand. I
deal
don't
with
understand it at all.
impressions.
I love driving down McKenna's normal ass suburban boring ass street, but
Very
there's
bit-
one
ordinary
house with a
neighborhood.
gate and a booth.
I think the idea behind those impressions is that he does old impressions, right?
Yes.
His
Yeah.
impressions
Very
are
Hollywood.
Time. That's again, you dial the clock forward 50 years, And it's like, I don't know, that's closer to the time than you think it is. Everybody, that's not that old-timey compared to some of what I'm seeing in here.
But do you want him to learn new stuff? Do you want him to be like, oh, this is Billie Eilish?
I'm honestly fine with the old impressions.
You know
I
what
don't
he
need him
should
to
do?
keep up with
Walter
times.
Brennan.
Yeah.
We should roll it back like 20 years. So like, do Joe C from Kid Rock. Do an impression of that. Do Fern Troyer.
It'll
That's what
always
we
just be
want.
20 years in the
Yeah,
past.
okay,
of what
Troyer,
you're
you're
doing.
All little people?
Yeah, Greg's really keeping him stuck on the little people.
Okay.
God, but like, you don't have to see it because you live in your fucking mansion. You don't have to look in the booth. But his heartbreak when they don't get his impression.
Yeah.
Maybe I should have him learn some modern day just so people recognize and can like point out and
That's
be like,
tough for him.
hey.
When Eliot Gould said, this guy's a big Walter Brennan Jr. fan.
Yes.
And the guy was not.
Yeah.
His
The
heartbreak was
meanest
terrible.
He
thing
was
anybody
crushed.
did to anybody in this movie is what Eliot Gould did to that guy right
Coke
there.
bottles aside. Mike, your camera's off.
Mike, get your dang camera on because it's your pick, bud.
Yeah, okay. Now
You
I
got
can cover the shadows.
back-to-back picks here, brother.
Oh!
Yeah.
I'm going to lock in my first pick, which I like to call the Greg pick.
Woo.
I want a Mercedes-Benz 450 SL. That is Mrs. Wade's car. It's a convertible.
Yeah, that's the Merc, yeah.
Is that the one that hits Eliot Gould right in the face at the end of the movie?
No, but it's when he's chasing it, and he does get
Oh,
hit by
the other
gets hit by
car
the other car.
behind that
Yeah.
car. Yeah.
Yeah, he
She
gets-
doesn't hit him.
Yeah, but she does like drive away from him without it being totally clear whether or not she
She
knows
knew,
he's back.
right?
Yeah.
Like,
She saw
I've
him.
seen my wife's face when I'm talking to her, and like that's her face. Like she can hear me, but she can't hear me.
All right, round number 1. I think it's got to go to me with my
Wow. First pick and the point.
Ferrari versus Mercedes-Benz. What is this? F1 racing? Not this weekend, no. Next weekend, though. Mike, you got the back-to-back picks. What are you going to do, bud?
Do you know what I love? Because this is an era before, not just before voicemails, but before answering machines. I want a bar where I go to get all my
hell
messages.
yeah.
There, 2 of my friends work there. We're gonna cut it up a little. One of them might be learning a song, but most of all, this is where people, if they want to get a hold of me, call the bar.
That's so, especially if you're going to be a private detective.
You're such a piece of
Yeah.
shit.
That's
like
so
you're such
rad.
a dirty, stinky piece of shit PI. Like it's so awesome.
Yeah, that they like take your notes at the bar. It reminds me of The Witness. Because Paul Newman used to be, or in that movie, he does like business basically out of the bar.
But he wouldn't even have to tell clients. They'd be like, "Well, we know.
The
We know.
verdict.
We know where to call. The verdict.
The
yeah.
verdict is what I mean.
Yeah, it's a great one. And then you have to sit and watch him. Like, all right, well, I have to make these phone calls back on a rotary phone. And just,
Yeah, dude.
Love it. I want the whole experience.
The whole click-clacky of it. Okay, I love it. Guy that's playing the piano. Books, it is back to you. What would you like in this, the second round?
I want Roger Wade's study.
Okay.
Like it looks out into the ocean and like he has a big old desk. And I mean, he's passed out drunk in his chair, but
And as a writer, to have the sea there all the time,
Yeah,
just the
like-
second you're ready to check out, just pop into the ocean.
I feel like that would imply that I've made it, even if I've been nothing
Yeah.
productive in my
Isn't
life.
that what
Like,
being a
that's
writer is?
Just you know,
trick people into thinking
yeah,
that you've made it.
that's all I would need.
Okay, it's a nice study. Very plush. And then, like, hidden alcohol all over it.
Hidden alcohol
Yeah.
and just go out into the ocean like whenever I want. Like it's right on the beach.
It's
Like,
so
you could
awesome
just-
to like hit like a fake seagull, and then like over here a bottle falls in your arm.
Uh-huh. I love it. All right, Ryan, what is your next pick?
So, Greg, I don't really know what to do here because my next pick is Roger Wade's house.
Yeah, well, it's not
without the study.
Minus the study.
The study has been sniped.
That house, like, because so we're in it like a very, very nice neighborhood.
Malibu
Where-
Colony. Like, people
Yeah.
know that just from, like, just in the world.
I
It's
mean,
like
they have a
known
security guard.
neighborhood.
One of the best security guards that money can buy. But yeah, that house is like, I don't know. I wouldn't ever think to design it that way myself, although I like the way that it is. Like,
Yeah.
if I
so
moved
many
into
plants.
it, yeah, I would keep it that way.
Would you feel like you were on display everywhere though? Because I would. In a house like that, I feel like
I see that a
would
lot
be-
in Southern California. Like, there are a ton of houses that are
Sure.
just like all glass.
Yeah.
Like, do you want to walk around naked? Everyone's gonna see you. And yeah, I want that.
Oh, okay.
Do you want
That's why I
fun
chose
fact?
the study. The study felt like it was kind of secluded.
Yes.
Just
Well, that's still yours.
A fun fact about the house. That is Altman's real house.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He was like, I don't know a perfect place to shoot this. Wait a minute.
That is a fun fact.
What if I don't have to
Live in.
leave?
Okay, I think I'm gonna go with having a naked lady apartment next to your apartment. So an apartment adjacent to a naked lady apartment. I feel like this is something movies kind of promised me would happen and then didn't really ever pan out in any meaningful way.
I feel like this is something that a Ferrari fan would definitely pick.
Right?
Yeah.
So naked lady apartment. But I want the apartment next to it because I would have no place in the naked lady apartment. But you could have meetings there or something. And then for the last round, for my last pick, let's see. I think I'm going to have to go with that tiny harmonica. It's so little.
I thought I would get that for sure.
It's the smallest one I've ever seen. I have very little idea what it means in the context of the movie. It's like the movie is handing you this tiny harmonica and being like, this is an image. And you get it and you're like, I don't know exactly what to make of this, but I love it. It's so tiny.
Greg, if we can, I know that you're the host and you have a lot on your plate, but if we could talk about that at some point, because was even Marlowe offered that harmonica, or was he just shown that harmonica and took it straight up?
My feeling of that was that is supposed to be the actual Robert Altman in the bed next to him, and he's literally talking to the director of the movie, and so like he and that character just understand each other perfectly,
so much so,
and so they don't have to really say anything, and so like their conversation advances much quicker than the audience can view because the things they're actually saying to, well, for one, the guy just goes "Arr," and then Phillip Marlowe just like answers, but they really seem to be communicating something, and the guy is holding a tiny harmonica. Like it just, he seems kind of like a weird stand-in for God.
Right.
Yeah.
But I also saw it as like Marlowe does not see the difference between what is offered to him and what is just there that he just takes immediately.
I like that. Yeah, and it's like he was a part of a class of people just starting to learn that maybe the world is not being just constantly offered to you on a platter. That like, yeah. So I could definitely see that. In fact,
Ryan.
I'm gonna give Ryan a point there. Oh, and then let's see who won the second round. I think, you know what? I was blown away by the bar that like takes your messages. I got to go with that. So, Mike, that goes to you. Ryan, what is your final pick?
Greg, for my final pick, I am going to let's get a little bit meta here.
Okay.
This movie was a failure.
Yeah.
Huge failure. And then left theaters and then came back on just the coast and
with a new funny poster.
With a new funny poster designed by Mort Drucker, who did all the Mad Magazine movie parodies with all of like the very boxy word balloons. And so I actually this is not technically in the movie, but I would love a original copy of the giant long goodbye Mort Drucker movie poster for my house.
I love it. The real movie poster, as we might call it. Yeah, to hear them tell the story of it, the original poster, people went to the theaters and were like, I'm mad about what I'm seeing.
Yeah, like I wanted bang bang, kiss kiss, you know?
And then the second poster, people were like, this is exactly for what I wanted to see, and I feel good about what I saw. All right, very good. Books, what is your final pick?
You know, it's a final pick that it's definitely selfish for me. I don't think it's going to be like wanted. But in the opening scene, when we see those neighbors, you can have the neighbors. You can have them as your neighbors.
Thank you.
One of the main girls was wearing this awesome floating like dressing gown robe thing that I really fucking want.
There are some very nice diaphanous dresses in there.
Barely had a twirl, and that thing was flying around her, and it was delightful.
I think the key to clothes is like you do the least amount of work, but the clothes do the rest of the work.
Yes.
They do the flow.
Attitude for me. Like if I don't want to have a personality that day, it doesn't matter. I am wearing that.
That really helps capture the ethereal presence that they're supposed to have in it. All right, Mike, where are you going? What's your last pick?
I want Terry Lennox's Mexican Getaway when he's sitting in the hammock and there's like a water feature there that you have to walk over a little cobblestone bridge thing. It looks so relaxing and beautiful before he gets shot.
Yeah, and obviously, what he did to get it, big thumbs down from this podcast.
You don't like that?
Yeah, don't do that. But once it happens and you're past it, and then there's like you can't influence it anymore. Then down in Mexico, again, the hammock, the water, it would make such a nice gurgling sound.
Can we just point out too that like the big edit in between him going to get out of the hammock and then him getting out of the hammock, and they cut out all of the like, God damn it,
yeah,
son of a big
spinning.
Yeah. Honestly, I think it would have been more true to just watch him like, hang on, hang on. Oh, I almost got it that time. Was the casting of this guy Was that a little rough? This is like an actual baseball player.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Was that a good choice in the end? I noticed in that last scene specifically, obviously Robert Altman was like, well, you should shrug a little bit. And he took that to mean at every line I deliver, shrug. So we got another argument. Shrug.
Dude, Altman might be like totally a genius, but also a fucking weirdo and a moron.
If you listen to him talk about making movies, he's like, I point the camera, I wait until a movie happens. When I know that a movie has happened, then I move on to the next scene, and then I put all those scenes together. He's like an idiot savant or something. He can't really explain what he does. Like he's like he waits until something interesting happens, and then he's like, all right, I guess that'll be the movie.
Yeah, I think that's a lot harder to do when you have non-actors going toe-to-toe with Eliot Gould.
Yeah, I think he was going for something because he's talking about masculinity in the movie, and so you bring in a jock, but it like he sticks out. He doesn't really like
no
settle.
John Cena.
He's no John Cena. In fact, we can see too much of him. Mike, I'm going to give that to you, man. You were on it today. Another point for Mike, and then of course,
Well, he had 2 weeks of film camp that he went to.
Yeah, dude.
Since his last performance.
He's really been studying. When we come back, this is only the middle of the show, but we're about to talk about the end. We spent a lot of the first segment talking about Gould and Marlowe. And I want to talk about that specifically with the end of the movie. How does the end of the movie, the killing by Marlowe, spoiler alert, of the living but soon to be dead Terry Lennox, how does that fit in with the rest of the movie, and what are we to make of it, Mike?
I get that Gould or Marlowe is supposed to be so frustrated at the end of his rope and so disgusted with what his friend did, especially because Terry Lennox does not give a shit what he's done, that he's like, he snaps, but it felt much more Humphrey Bogart Marlowe move to shoot him.
Okay.
And not like mumble a quip and bring him back to justice. Feels like our Marlowe would do that.
Or not even bring him back to justice, but just like, this is life. It's
Cut
okay
him out
with
of
me.
his like friendship or whatever.
Yeah. Like-
We are not friends anymore. But
And Craig, if I watched you, like if you killed your wife, I think we'd still be friends.
Well, let me ask you, like, that's awful.
Yeah, I would not be, by the way.
Okay, you know what? That's a point for Mike, because that's the test. You should not be my friend so much that if I kill my wife, you're still my friend. You no longer have an obligation to be my buddy.
Well, was she like, you know?
Oh my goodness. But
Oh my goodness.
why? Let me ask you, because Mike, you seem to have a pretty good grip on like why Marlowe does it. Books. Why did you think that Marlowe kills Terry Lennox in the end?
I think he was so stuck in this idea that because he would never do these things that other people do, someone he was friends with wouldn't do.
Okay.
And I think if he didn't, it reflected something bad about himself.
Okay, so
Like,
because
he
he
didn't
didn't like
take
the
that
way
measure.
it looked to himself, if he didn't.
Yeah, like
kill.
how could I? It would be
So
like,
selfish.
how could I be friends with someone who is this much of a monster if I let him keep like it?
But also
reflects-
vouch for him that.
yeah,
many
like the whole
times.
movie, he's like, I know it's not true. So if he let him, it was almost more of a stain of a reflection of who he was, not truly his character that he would want to kill him, but
And specifically the fact that this guy killed his own wife.
Yeah,
Because there's also the idea that it could be because Terry then like kind of hangs everything on him, and not just by showing up at his apartment and being like, hey, could you take me down to Tijuana? But he does like 3 things after that kind of like implicate Phillip Marlowe.
But hey, what are
but that
friends
never
for?
bothers him.
Yeah. Okay. So you don't think that does factor into his decision in the end? Because to me, when I first watched it, I was sure that the reason he kills Terry is because he can't believe. Like the author says at one point, Wade says about him, I never knew the guy. And I feel like a big part of the reason why he kills him is because he cannot believe that like that guy could kill his wife and then come over and just like sit on his couch.
Right.
That he lives with those type of men in the world and that he can't even parse who they are.
It does stand out to me. Like every time I watch it, I'm surprised by the ending somehow. Like a reversed Shyamalan, where you're like, I can't believe that this thing just happened, because you like this is not the Marlowe
Yeah.
that I have been watching this entire time. And so I have to keep going back to Altman, who keeps alternating between, like, in my head about, like, what he feels about 73 as opposed to 43. And is this a better time or a worse time? And he keeps rooting for Wade. What's the author's? Roger Wade.
Yeah.
Who is Ernest Hemingway, who is like the old school, most like old school Hollywood, like I'm gonna wrestle a bear and drink a shot and then write a book tonight.
And then the movie invites us to think that he's the bad guy.
Right.
Right. And then, but then the big switcheroo is that no, it's this sort of more modern coded, but still very evil, and doesn't even understand the depth of his evil.
Marlowe watches. Like, he watches, along with his with Eileen, watches Roger Wade go into the ocean. Like, where have you gone, Joe DiMaggio? Like, I am watching my era go away. I'm literally watching it go into the ocean and kill itself. And so now all I am left with are these fucking hippies, and I can deal with the apartment of naked girls. It's all okay by me. You know, you guys want brownie mix? I'm not judging you. You know, like, he does a pretty good job of, like, not being horned up or judgy around that apartment. But, like,
he seems unfazed by it for the most part.
It's like he's used to it, or he's like, this is his world now, as opposed to, like, I think it's Johnny, the hitman, who's like, he's got the binoculars. He's like, oh my God, Phillip Marlowe, have you seen these girls?
He says, do you think of an apartment full of like 6 women? Do you think they're a couple of lesbians?
Look, nobody ever expected a mook to be able to count. Okay?
But then at the end, it's almost like 1973 sensibilities of like, whatever, man. Pushes him too far, where he has no choice but to shoot it in the face.
Because then it goes all the way to like this sort of moral ambiguity about like violence and
Marlowe's black and white is so black and white, and I think that the thing with Lennox is like, well, she just got crazy, right? She just got a little crazy, and I had to hit her. He beat her face in.
Yeah,
there is a line there. That's a line that Marlowe sees where he's like, no, you can't live anymore.
And because he doesn't react when the other girl gets hit with a Coke bottle.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, he like kind of reacts, but it's not like he spends the rest of the movie going like, "What the fuck? No, what the fuck?" Right? Like he's just like, it's kind of like, wow, that really did show how hardcore this guy is, and he's messed up, and I don't like him, so I don't want to get involved with him. But not like, you're a psychopath, man. Like,
well, he uses it to dig at the guy later. But he doesn't, he's not so affronted by the violence against a woman in front of him. He's like, well, I'm going to tuck that away to have a snide aside next time I see Marty Argus.
And then later the conversation, he literally talks to that woman, and he's like, hey, you want to smoke? And she's like, no, thank you. And he's like, oh, it's okay by me. And it's like, okay, now it kind of feels like you have shrugged off everything that's happened to this woman, and this is also okay by
But that's
you.
the thing, is that like literally everything must be shrugged off in order to maintain peak Marlowe-ness.
Yeah.
You know, is like that, like literally, like, there are some deeds that should like be avenged, but that's why the shooting at the end comes so out of left field to me, is because Marlowe's just going to Marlowe all the way up and down the street, just mumbling and like retying his tie instead of like actually taking severe action.
And then another strong choice centered around the end of the movie is the kind of whole big plot twist of Terry Lennox being alive is like shoved into this conversation exterior to a car where he's driving with 2 guys down a dirt road, and one of them says, oh yeah, he's still alive, and then they very quickly make a joke and move on, and then we see him walking.
Yeah, I think that's something that the 40s and the 70s have in common, of like, I don't fucking care. This is so unimportant to us. Like, what we're saying about the man and what we're saying about these characters,
that's the important part.
Like, all of the like twists and like the little turns, whatever, man.
The actual detective work
Because
that's supposed to be happening.
Altman famously said of this movie, I will make it, but the only thing you can't do is you can't change the end. I have to have like final sign off on the end. So obviously he saw the end as very important. That doesn't mean that he cared about every single element of it. I mean, he maybe just cared about the shooting, but it's a odd kind of moment that you like are liable to maybe miss. Like even the way it's shoehorned into the dialogue, it's like they are talking all around it, and then the next thing you know, is that maybe because like we're gonna see him alive in a second anyway, so it doesn't matter. Like we'll all catch up.
Yeah, it feels like maybe because it's not just shoehorned in; it's ADR'd in. We're not seeing these characters talk, and it feels like either by the shaggy way Altman makes movies, or there was a longer version where this baseball player can't act explained all the same stuff, and it just didn't work, and it was not clear, that it felt the most studio-noted part of this movie to me, of like, I don't know, just have these three characters, you'll never see their mouths, explain everything that's happened in the movie so far.
As a car sort of drives through this city.
Yeah. It's hard because this era of Altman, which is the era of Altman, right? If we go MASH, Long Goodbye, McCabe and Mrs. Miller, is like these three classics of Hollywood, war movie, Western, detective movie. I'm going to make it so they're never looked at the same again, right? So like I'm going to fucking flip them on their head, blah, blah, blah. And so what he's doing is he's picking and choosing what he wants to keep from those 40s movies and what he wants to turn on their head. And like, this part is interesting to me because it basically becomes like worse than or less dynamic than a Ken Burns documentary of like, I'm not even like Ken Burns would do more with this scene, show more pictures and have more fiddle playing than what he shows there. And so I think it's just like, let's fast forward. Like if we're on a book on tape, let's hit the ×2, ×3 button to get to the point where I actually want to get back to again.
Okay, and so that's why it maybe sticks out a little bit because he's just trying to race into that. And then, again, the harmonica. This is when he finally plays that harmonica, the little one. He plays a little song, and it's the first time we have heard in the entire movie a song different than the long goodbye. And it's clearly like he is free now. He's freed himself from this story. But what else is there about that harmonica? It seems like it's so important to the end. The movie's really sitting on it. But do we get anywhere with it?
I wonder if it's like there's that, the street joke of let me play the tiniest violin.
That's kind of what it feels like.
If it feels like, the harmonica's a happier instrument, so it's like this is as happy as he's allowed to be right now.
Okay, I like that.
He's a knuckle harmonica's worth of happy.
For the
kind of the worst
like,
version of one of the worst instruments.
For somebody like Marlowe to succeed, who is a hero, yes, but like the lowest of the low, it's on the like the backs of other much more fucked up people, and so we're all going to hand you the tools that you need to get to where you are. So like if you look at like Lord of the Rings, like I picked up all these things on my journey. And so I think it's one of that of like it's hard for Marlowe to find people that are more fucked up, that are more desperate to like give him the tools. And so here's a guy who can't move, who's like cartoon level fucked up.
I do have to say, probably one of the funniest cuts in film history is Marlowe being hit by that car. Slam cut to the guy moaning, totally wrapped up in bandages. Slam cut to Marlowe looking at him like, oh man, you look like you're messed up. That made me laugh out loud every time I watched this movie because you fall for it a little bit every time.
And that's one of Marlowe's inner thoughts, outer thoughts that kind of works is when he's getting up and he's just like, I've seen most of your pictures. It's like, yes, he does look like the Invisible Man. All right, Marlowe, you finally got one.
Okay.
But like, I think that's where Marlowe likes being is not like the gangster and not
Marty Augustine
and not like the author, but like in the cracks. I'm going to sneak through the cracks where like I'm never noticed and like so no extreme things ever happen to me, or if they do, I will figure out a way to like a worm or like water slide through.
Yeah, because that's what we're really getting here, right? It's like a tour through different forms of masculinity and him like not belonging to or fully denying any part of them.
Exactly right. It's like this is stupid what you're doing, but also I kind of like it to every single type of masculinity.
When we come back, we're taking a visit to the hallowed halls of the Pop Filter Hall of Fame. Here we are in the recently re-hallowed halls of the Pop Filter Hall of Fame. The original hallowing kind of wore off after a while, and so we had them professionally re-hallowed, and I love it. What does everybody think?
If you don't re-hallow, and we are recording right around spooky season, if you don't re-hallow, the ghouls and goblins will sneak in.
Oh man, this place used to be full of ghouls, but we finally got rid of them. Ryan, are you fine with this hallowing?
No, it's good. Like I love the smell.
No, it's good. Okay.
It just smells like the dust that settles on dust. Like it's like second generation stinky dust.
No.
Is that must? Is double dust must? Is that the math there?
Must, yeah.
Elon Musk. Books, we have invited you into the Pop Filter Hall of Fame, but you are only allowed to look and to comment on the things here.
Okay.
You are not allowed to say what you think should be in here. But
Okay.
You can say what you think should not be in here by saying, like, that's a stupid choice, or
You're a fucking moron.
you're very old. That's an old thing that only old people are aware of. Like when Ryan says, like, let's do Werther's Originals. I'm like, whoa, the originals. I like the sexy new Werther's they got. Werther's.
Extreme Werther's.
After dark. Extreme Werther's Baja Blast.
Gross. It's still kind of caramel-y.
Mike, does this movie have a Baja Blast? No, different part of Mexico. Mike, what do you think belongs in the Pop Filter Hall of Fame?
This is one of those where did I fuck up because I just didn't look at all the busts close enough?
No.
This person is so important to, I think, like modern comedy. He gave us puking and screaming, call an ambulance and party down, telling these adult 30-year-olds that he is now their papa and they can stay with him even though him and their mom are no longer dating. He's the hot doctor in children's. Ken Marino turns everything he's in into goddamn gold.
He is sort of in the Hall of Fame.
Wet Hot American Summer.
Is Wet Hot in there?
I thought the
Well, now I want to highlight him alone.
Oh, okay.
Well, I was just mentioning Wet Hot American Summer as something he's in, not as something
Oh,
that
yes.
is in the Pop Filter Hall of Fame. What do you think he?
I thought the cast of the state was in the.
I do
Hall
think the state is in the Hall of Fame, but I think
Shit.
you know what? I think it could be argued that he deserves his own place. Ian Michael Black, that would help like kind of water down the amount that Ian Michael Black is getting. Okay, a strong Ken Marino, usually one of the funniest people in every single thing he's in.
And I don't think it's apocryphal. A story is he cared so much about a sketch he once threw a metal chair across the room at a wall. And you know what? As somebody who's thrown a chair across the room while we've podcasted before, I respect that kind of intensity.
In both not happy endings. The other two and Party Down, he has a name that has a first name that rhymes with his last name. So that's
Heck
why
yeah.
not be in
Comedy
the Hall
gold.
of Fame right there.
That's always going to be a good one. Ryan, who do you think belongs in the Pop Filter Hall of Fame?
I also, Greg, like Mike did, walked up and down these fucking hallowed, musty,
you really gotta
dusty, stinky.
Control F the busts.
And I wanted to make. Oh, by the way, McKenna,
Yes.
do you have any thoughts on
Ken Marino.
No, I don't have any comment.
What if he had said Dan Marino?
I don't know. who
Star of
that
Ace
Races
Ventura,
out.
Pet Detective?
One-time quarterback for the Miami Dolphins, Dan Marino.
I would say I don't know who that fucking person is,
That's
so they
true.
don't belong there.
The-
So
The proof is in the pudding on that
Yeah.
one.
Walked up the hallowed halls and noticed something, and then watched The Long Goodbye. And I saw this motherfucking swarthy, curly-haired idiot mumbling and bumbling his way all up and down the field. And I was like, Eliot Gould, you son of a bitch, you made me think of something. Greg Heinlein is not in the Pop Filter Hall of Fame.
That's true. I'm not. I'm standing in it right now, but
Now, Mike Ravano is,
yeah, Mike is.
and Ryan Haley is.
Is that true? You guys are-
That is
Ryan is?
Yes, that is true.
Yeah, we just
When
put
did you get
Ryan-
in?
We put Ryan in recently.
Oh, on his birthday, right?
Yeah, I'm the only one on this show that's not in the Hall of Fame.
But Greg Heinlein is not in the Pop Filter Hall of Fame. And I was like, Eliot Gould, you done it again,
Gotta
buddy.
move over.
Push Greg in.
I thought for sure you were just doing the Mike thing of just like, who's in this movie? Eliot Gould, the Pop Filter Hall of Fame. Eliot Gould. I love it.
Let's not call that the mic thing.
That is 100% the Mike thing.
Oh, fuck. We have a
don't
show
know.
in 4 minutes?
Yeah, the mic thing is to forget that we have to go to the Hall of Fame.
Oh, God. Here we are. Hall of Fame. I don't know.
Tina Fey.
Marble floor? For mine, I think I've pitched this guy before.
Oh, wait. Hold on.
Oh,
McKenna.
books.
I think shame on you for just now like realizing you have
Yeah.
you have a host not even in your Hall of Fame.
I think that's a little weird, though, to put him in the Hall of Fame.
You're in it.
I'm currently, I have to stand outside the Hall of Fame and talk to you through an
Yeah,
open window.
just screaming.
It's very
Well,
embarrassing.
we're both on our lazy
Yes.
boy loungers that are ours as part of our.
Beneath our bus.
Seems pretty cool in there. It's very hot out here. Is it cool? The AC? I can kind of feel it coming out the window.
Do you think it like lowers the standards of the Hall of Fame that you both have put yourselves in? The Hall
I
of
did not
Fame?
put myself in. I was not
to
on
be
that
fair
show.
to me, I was out for months.
Yeah.
It was one of the times I was
All right.
dead.
I'll
they
be the
put me in
first-
posthumously.
If I
Appreciative.
vote for myself, I'll be the first person to vote for himself.
Well, now you've set him up for failure.
But I will tell you this much. My candidate is way more deserving to be in the Hall of Fame than I am. I recently watched a movie. And thank you. And that movie was called Bottoms.
Yes.
Bottoms is a very good movie that you are aware of its deficits. And the whole time you're like, man, this is so close to the perfect movie, but it's not quite the perfect movie. And I thought, why isn't Bottoms the perfect movie? And I realized because they forgot to cast Tim Meadows. If you want your comedy to be as funny as it possibly can be, and you have not cast Tim Meadows, then you have totally messed up. And say you accidentally cast Marshawn Lynch, who, like, if
He did a good job, dude.
He did it. He did a fine job.
He did an okay.
He was super funny.
He did an okay. I think he did an okay job. I think that if you had put Tim Meadows in that movie,
Sure.
Plus, it would have been a nod to the type of movies that it was not parodying, but like in conversation with, if you can call Bottoms in conversation with movies. I think that it would have been a little bit.
Have you guys
better.
seen Marshawn Lynch's episode of Murderville?
I have not.
No.
It's pretty good.
What I loved about Marshawn Lynch is because I'm not a sportster, I didn't know who he was. I was just like, well, this is a cameo. I can tell by the way the camera just
You can
moved.
tell by the
that
framing.
This is somebody I should know.
It is funny because he kind of like stands as like the chorus for just men who are watching the
Yeah.
movie. And so like he's like, okay, women are pretty good. And then halfway through they start having conflict with each other and he's like, I knew it, women are bad. And then at the end of the movie he's like, oh no, women are good.
And when he's proven right, he doesn't cross off
No.
feminism off the chalkboard. He crosses it out.
Yeah.
Even though it's very erasable.
I am done with feminism. But Tim Meadows is the best part of so much of what he's in. He made Walk Hard the movie it is, Pop Star the movie it is, many
Ladies
other.
Man.
Ladies Man. He made Ladies Man would not have been the same movie.
Mean
without
Girls.
Tim Meadows. He's the funniest part of Mean Girls. I mean, he's the funniest part of some very funny
Broke his
stuff.
fucking arm during the filming of Mean Girls, and still
He didn't
was
even
there.
care. He's like, you know what? Big deal. Whatever. So I have pitched him before, and he didn't make it.
Is that true?
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I feel very confident that he belongs in it. And again, also he's got that thing where his career has been really long, and so like we have years and years of Meadows to run in.
That probably ruined it right there.
All right.
Mac, what do you think about Tim Meadows?
Oh yeah, Tim Meadows.
I haven't seen Bottoms yet, so that part of
You-
your argument, I am very sad to
I'll
say
show
I
you
can't
Bottoms right now.
contribute.
No,
But-
HR talked to us about that. You can't say stuff like that.
I do support this pick.
Okay.
I absolutely adore Tim Meadows.
It's the first one she supported. That means something.
Okay, she has weighed in. Mike, your pick was who again?
Ken Marino.
Ken Marino. Mike, do you vote for Ken Marino?
I do.
Ryan, do you vote for Ken Marino?
We only have 2 picks, McKenna.
Yeah, well, it's very
Out
tense
of the
because we're
3.
only allowed to
Yeah.
vote for 2.
And I do, but I don't. Ultimately, Greg, I don't.
Ultimately, not voting for Ken Marino. I am also going to pass on voting for Ken Marino, which I do not mean as an insult
Yeah.
to Ken Marino, but I do think there's a level that is so high that is still kind of below the Hall of Fame.
That's insulting. You
Yeah.
said, I don't mean to insult, but like,
Yeah.
you're
He's
worse
in the
than...
Hall
Not
of,
that
You're fine.
But you know, ultimately he's never done the job on his own, Ryan. So he's got to be a companion to something else. All right, Ryan, your pick is Greg.
Mhm.
Do you think Greg should be in the Hall of Fame?
No. I'm just kidding.
You even had the vote. You even had the vote to do it.
Yes, Greg. I think that you should be in the Hall of Fame.
Well, thank you, Ryan. I appreciate that. Mike, do you think Greg should be in the Hall of Fame?
Here's the thing. I do, but sometimes you go up against a really hard class.
That's
Oh,
true.
shit.
And what hurts more, me not voting for Greg in or me not voting for Greg's pick? So I'm going to say in the future, I would love to say yes to Greg Heinlein, but it can't be tonight.
Wow.
You had the chance to not vote to your own, though.
Wow. I love it.
Did Mike just get points for that?
He did, yeah, because that was in my face and extreme.
But you sound so torn up about it, but you could have not voted for your own pick.
That's true.
Sorry.
But let's face it, when we come to do Pop Filter Hall of Fame, we do not
no,
mess
it's-
around.
it's- hey,
we do
rock
not
the
mess
vote.
around.
Rock the vote.
Can't rock the vote, baby. I have the vote, so I might as well use it for me. Yeah, I this would have been the final vote for me in the Hall of Fame.
If Greg will be here to host next week's episode, that's what I am concerned about.
Got
right
a
now.
lot of soul searching to do. Got to figure out. Maybe I could have done better somehow.
What a fucking holy shit!
Yeah.
Here's a layup. Please, Mike, put this compliment in the basketball hoop so we can score 2 basketball points.
Like, he didn't kill his wife, but he might be a bad friend still.
Please don't kill me.
Don't kill the messenger. But that's fine. That's fine. That's how it's going to be. I will call on myself for Tim Meadows. I think Tim Meadows is a perfect choice for the Pop Filter Hall of Fame. Ryan, do you think Tim Meadows?
No.
Wow.
My vote would have been yes, and now this negates my no Greg vote. Everything's fucked.
I hope you feel good about yourself.
Well, the way it works is sometimes nobody makes it into the Pop Filter Hall of Fame. You have a class so strong that they all knock each other out, and nobody makes it.
You remember those Olympics, like '84, right?
Yeah.
Los Angeles. Everybody's like, "You guys are all so good." No gold medals.
No gold medals at
No
all.
medals.
Silvers for everybody. That is the Pop Filter Hall of Fame.
Let's delete that.
A little emptier than we might have expected it to be when we arrived today. Guys, I'll meet you out here when you're done with your exhibits, and we will head back to talking about The Long Goodbye. The Long Goodbye is in many ways a throwback to old Hollywood, while also being 1973 as fudge. What is The Long Goodbye's relationship to the most beautiful fraud in the world? The cinema.
Is that what you say about movies?
I do. I call him the most beautiful fraud in the world. Or I call him the greatest con ever conceived.
Hey, hon, do you want to go to the theaters tonight and maybe see the most beautiful fraud in the world?
Ryan, check it out. Check it out. Movies. That's just a series of still pictures.
24 per second?
24 per
No,
second.
they move.
And your brain makes them move.
Oh,
Ryan.
yeah.
That's the illusion. That's the con that you play on the self. You go in there to hallucinate together. And that's what happens. It's notable that the first song we hear after The Long Goodbye is the little ditty on the very small harmonica, which I think we've gotten to the very bottom of. But the next, the roll credits, the other song on the soundtrack is "Hooray for Hollywood."
And it's actually the bookends. That is musically the opening credits is "Hooray for Hollywood," and then we
Okay.
get the full version over the credits. So it is. If you didn't get that this movie's about Hollywood, guys, he was telling you musically from the beginning to the end.
And, like, about Hollywood, like, Babylon is, like, I don't know if it's about Hollywood, the city, or the movie place that things get made, or just about the knowledge of it, right? Like, if we want to go a little bit meta, like, do you know that movies exist? No. I'm sorry. We should
Move on.
stop to ask everyone, do they know who the Muffin Man is? Because we've been on the lookout for a while. But, like, do you know what, like, that there is pop culture?
Yeah.
And, like, I found that interesting throughout this whole movie because it feels like that Eliot Gould, Phillip Marlowe walking through this movie is pop culture in a real world, quote unquote. But then, like...
Yeah, you said that a couple times, that, like, it's Barbie coming to the real world. This is like Phillip Marlowe is just suddenly in the actual world.
But then, like...
Well, I think it's almost reverse. Because he does not act like the hard-boiled detective who's going to punch everybody that we've gotten to know, but he runs into it and he's like, the gangster's going to act like movie gangsters. The cops, he like quotes them. He's like, is this the part you do this? Because you're going to act like movie cops.
Right, so yeah.
He's calling everybody out, saying, I'm a normal guy and I've seen movies. Fuck all of you people.
Right, so it's like Jack Slater from Last Action Hero.
Okay.
Yes.
You know, like I know the tropes. I know, or like Cabin in the Woods or Scream or whatever you want to do. Like, I think that this is the prototypical movie like that.
I've seen the movies, so I know how to work in this world.
But then there's also Johnny, and I keep going back to Johnny because Johnny is the most movie character of all
Who's
of
Johnny?
Johnny is a henchman who's like,
Oh, the one who watches him who has the tie and he's like, fix your tie.
That's Harry. Henry? Harry.
hey, like, you can't. Here's the address where I'm going to. You know, if you're gonna
Yeah.
follow me.
yeah.
And then, like, it gets so broad where, like, he goes to climb a fence, and then Eliot
my
Gould
God.
opens a door, and the fence just opens with him on it. Like, he is the most movie character of all of them. And yet, when Walter Brennan comes out as McKenna's security guard, he has no idea who that is.
Yeah.
You know, like, I think that's what we're playing with here is, like, what is your connection to film? Is it you know about it or you are in one. And I think that's what separates.
Because one thing that's kind of
The
interesting,
characters.
and maybe this reinforces what you're saying, is it's shot in a very anti-movie way, right? Like we talked last week about how the camera never stops moving in Mean Streets. And that happens in this movie. It's just a lot more subtle, and I don't feel like you necessarily always are aware
It's not
of
nauseating.
it. It's not, yeah. And it's, yeah, like it's not this camera work where you're like, where you have to think about it. But the camera never does stop.
But in Mean Streets, it does stop moving. And we never notice. In Long Goodbye, it literally never stops moving.
And nothing is
that's
ever...
so Altman. Is he's just, because he's so shaggy with his script writing and is very improvisational, he's like, I'm going to move slowly through everything so everybody can do whatever they want. And they don't know if they're on screen or not, because that's real while it's very fake at the same time.
If you hear him talk about it, he says that he did it so that there wouldn't be shots. He was afraid of having shots in the movie. And so like he's
so great, but he's such a jerk off.
Honestly,
he really sucks.
Well, like the things he says are the things that a complete jerk off would say, but the way he says them, it's like he stumbled into being wise or something. Because he doesn't say I had this amazing
Like the
idea.
Ernest Hemingway from this movie.
Yeah, he doesn't do that really. He's just like, it's almost like, oh gosh, I thought kind of, wouldn't it be weird if I did this? And I guess it kind of
I'm
worked.
a genius.
Yeah, like I mean, but like it's weird because it's just not that it's not super offensive. The text is offensive, but to listen to him say it, it's just he happened upon the idea.
He said, "You're trying to like figure out the alternative man, but I'm the alt man." You know, is what he said.
Very good. One of the things I struggled with in this movie that I know is just an Altman staple is the sound. I really like everything is post. It feels like everything is sound after the fact, and they did a really. I want to say they did a bad job, but I know that they did this the way they intended to. But he should not be turned away from the camera saying something, and it's as loud to me as somebody in the foreground facing the camera talking. It was like so... That part was in my face. I could not stand the way so much of this sounded. It really like took me out of it a lot. Did anybody else have that same problem, or is that just Altman and there's nothing to do about it?
I guess it helps going, like, I think your first Altman is always going to be hard, but it helps knowing that, and that's why rewatching is so good, because you're like, well, now I'm going to pay attention to somebody else's dialogue, I guess, because I fucking have to, because I missed it the last time I watched this. And that's and like for McCabe and Mrs. Miller before this movie, Warren Beatty saw the final cut. It was like, you dumb motherfucker, you don't know how to do any sound.
Literally nobody can understand what's being said in this movie.
And then the sound guy was like, I know I'm not supposed to say this, so keep this on background. I agree. He does not know how to do fucking sound.
But wouldn't there have been a way to have the sound be done in post, as the kids say, and have it sound like it is still in the environment of, or is that just too much to ask for with the technology or with like the money he had back then, or does it just not matter?
He truly doesn't care, I think.
Yeah, I mean, and honestly, everything that he does that is wrong, and like, I'm not shitting on him. I think that he's an amazing genius, blah, 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 idiot savant. Everything that he does is wrong, is counterculture. And so he likes that, you know, like he gets off on that fact that like, you can't hear what these people are saying. And I don't think that like, this does not have the laid over dialogue of like Nashville.
No, that's not what I'm talking about. It's not those layers of things. It's the fact that like, it doesn't matter where anybody is on the screen. Or
also, I don't care what your mouth is doing. I'll just fucking I'll throw some dialogue on top of it.
And it's like we can't not notice that those two people are having a completely different conversation.
We're already in the artifice of film, baby.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like it's already there. Like we're already looking at you know, when I think that when Eliot Gould comes downstairs like from like sort of solving a case and that is immediately interrupted by Marty Augustine, immediately, like, what is this guy's life? That's the artifice of film, baby. You know, like the plot is crazy. The
and
film
not
is crazy.
fully explained, right? Like, I mean, the movie really it
does not matter.
You can connect the dots, but like, I feel like it's a pretty shaggy dog in the end. And like, how does the woman know to show up with the money at the exact moment that she does? And it's not even explained to the audience that she definitely is the one that dropped off the money. Mm-hmm. Right? Like, and it's not even explained to the audience that that's what's happened. You have to kind of like put all of that together. And it's like he's very purposefully having this plot recede into the background. So we're just seeing people's reactions to it. speed round at the perfect time. We haven't even talked about this figure, but it seems like very important to a third of the movie. What is up with Dr. V? The guy that like runs the health clinic that is supposed to dry people out, but is first of all a creepy doctor, like stepped right out of Sisters, and second of all is like more than any other gangster is like, where's my fucking money? Where's my fucking money for my treatment? What are we doing with this guy?
This is supposedly like a making fun of Hollywood. I'll just go to a ranch and cure all myself.
Yes,
And
which is a big part of like Hollywood culture, right? You get exhausted.
But he's also the huge celebrity from Nashville. Like, this is the guy that everyone revolves around.
Thank you. That's why he was familiar. I kept staring at this guy. I'm like, why do I know this little face?
And he's the head of the Illinois Nazis in the Blues Brothers, if you're familiar with that movie.
Well, I am against that. And clearly, like, I guess he's the establishment. Is he supposed to be the establishment, though? Because, like, it's the...
He's like a Manson-esque kook.
Okay.
Like,
It's like
that's
kind of
how
a culty figure.
He feels like a culty figure who's just a little less violent than Manson and like knows how to play the game a little better, but feels just as exploitative of rich Hollywood
Feels
folks.
as much like a gangster as any... He's
Right.
like the true gangster in the movie. I mean, he comes in and he starts smacking around the guy that is like the archetypal version of masculinity. I mean, we have not a Hemingway type. The movie went out of its way to give us
That's the beard,
Hemingway.
bro.
Yeah. And then he basically bitch slaps this guy and humiliates him in front of everybody.
He also seems like the only active character throughout, right? Because the real mobster guy, it just the only way he gets his money is it literally falls in his lap. And the whole time he's trying and searching, but he never makes things happen. Eliot Gould doesn't make a lot of things happen. Things happen around him, and he has to accept it or move with it. He is the only active.
But that is like, that's cult leader-ish to me.
Yeah,
of
absolutely.
like, hey, you can leave anytime you want. Oh, I want to leave. Fuck you. What'd you say to me? Slap, slap, slap.
Also, that being really small, that is so Manson. I mean,
Yeah.
the Hollywood Hills, small guy that has this weird unearthly control. It also felt to me a little bit like Scientology, like
Yes.
poking
Because
its head up a little bit.
When Sterling Hayden saw Eliot Gould outside that window, he was like, oh, I'm free. But before he saw Eliot Gould, he was like, oh, I am under the spell. This
Yes.
is my doctor, and I will do whatever he says.
You cannot talk about this movie without talking about the fact that Eliot Gould or Phillip Marlowe can light a match on anything, including multiple times
yeah.
glass. Is that like a trick?
I can't believe we made it through a shopping spree without
Honestly, that was
somebody drafting the most lightable matches in the history of time.
I literally was questioning. I was like, if I just run my matches in my house over just random surfaces, would they light? Is that normal?
There has to be a little bit of friction. I don't know if it's that he's so good at like
the angle. Just
the angle or something really drawn.
I think that's, again, movie magic. All movie characters from his era, not ours, but not ours, 1973, but his need to smoke. So they have to light at any point. And so they will light on, like, you could literally rub them on water and they will light.
And you learn how to do it because that's how you're going to get your sweet, sweet lady nicotine.
Right.
Because that's his everything, right? Like he says about spirituality at one point, I have nicotine.
God, and when he's cooking,
yeah,
he's disgusting.
Oh, man. And there are times where he does that thing where, like, smoking obviously generally is cool, but I feel like this movie really pushes that. Like, it's often not cool. And one thing that's not cool about smoking is sometimes all the smoke goes directly into your eyes.
Yeah.
And that happens to Eliot Gould like several different times. Yeah, and he's like, oh, God, I done burned my eyes. Arnold Schwarzenegger is in this movie. Is this the best Arnold Schwarzenegger movie we've ever done for the show?
T2. I think it's time to step down a step. I think this is it.
This is the new one.
He had a sexy little mustache, and he got naked and said nothing. I fucking loved it. And he had a page boy haircut? Come on.
And this is good evidence of the fact that we think of Arnold Schwarzenegger as like a super buff dude, but he actually kind of got smaller to be a star in movies. He is a house in this thing. He's too big. He's functionally like broken being that big.
He makes the rest of the mafia guys just not look like anything whatsoever.
They're children.
Yes, they're just...
Honestly, this would be like Altman making a joke, I guess, like about thugs. Like he's comically thuggy.
Did you notice that?
There's a point where his pants are above his knees. They all start stripping, but then he still has to take a step threateningly forward. Nobody has ever been threatening with their pants half down.
Yeah, dude.
I'm still like, oh, he'll take out Eliot Gould.
I don't know.
Sure.
Honestly, from what I've heard of Arnold Schwarzenegger, I bet he could be a little threatening with his pants half down. What is with like the model UN version of Marty Augustine's Gangsters? I feel like there was like a point about the fact that
The
like
Benetton.
yeah, that he's got like he says at one point, Marlowe says at one point, yeah, you've got like one Irish guy, you've got one Mexican guy. I fucking love Paco, the Mexican guy that he speaks to in Spanish, and then when Paco talks back to him, he sounds like an announcer on a late night show. Like, hey, boss, I don't know. I think maybe we ought to think about getting out of here. And
So Paco's the only one who threw Augustine's bullshit. He's like, everybody straight. Paco's like, I'm just gonna not be here.
oh, dude, that's so awesome. Like, everybody take off your clothes. Like, hey, boss, you know, I got a lot of scars, and I don't want anybody to see them. You think I can stand in the room? He's like, obviously, yes, Paco. You man the phone. Everybody else, get your clothes on. What genre or of music did you most like hearing The Long Goodbye in? And you can say none if the answer is none. Like, did people get kind of haunted by this? Like, when did you first notice that this was the only song we were going to hear?
We were talking about that movie Bottoms earlier.
Yes.
Recent movie that came out, and like it's so weird to have like a broad comedy come out these days.
Women's comedy.
And there's starting women.
Now.
But like there's like actual jokes in there. And this movie also, like Bottoms, like sort of like has to like get you into the jump rope.
Yeah.
And like I'm gonna feel your tone.
Because for a while you're gonna be like, is this movie dumb? And it's like, no, it's trying to do an unusual thing.
It's doing a thing. And the sixth time, Eliot Gould's like, well, that's okay by me. And then he leaves the room, and it's like, the long goodbye.
For me, it's the first time he hits a doorbell, and the doorbell does the song from the movie. Like, oh, okay. I think I see what's going on here. But did anybody have a favorite?
The marching band.
Yeah.
In Mexico, like the
Yes.
funeral band?
Yes.
Okay, that's a
For
good
sure.
one. I kind of
Because
like,
I think at that point you're sick of it, and so that brings it back and gives it new life. You're like, all right.
I kind of like the Eastern when the girls are doing yoga. There's like a very Eastern sounding one. All right, let's see. Is the Wade connection, the fact that the Wades are connected to the Lennoxes, is that too convenient? Is it a sign that the book was way more convoluted and the movie is less convoluted? Is that realistic somehow?
Again, I think that they all lived in the same neighborhood, and I think that these books a lot of the time are like, middle class, fuck you, the rich get to do what they want, until one middle class person steps up and like puts a bullet in somebody, like stops their fucking antics, because the rich
You hear that, middle class listeners? Just put a bullet in somebody.
the rich will just keep doing stuff. And so like Mr. Wade was fucking Lennox's wife. But it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like, there's always...
To quote, no, Matt, go.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, because they're all so interconnected, there's always going to be a connection. Like, it's not even forced.
And there's one point early on in the movie where Elaine Wade is like, oh, what happened to our friend? And Eliot Gould's like, what? He's like, oh, I mean your friend.
Yeah.
Only you know.
Yeah.
That's part
your
of
friend
why-
that only you know.
That's part of why it's not convenient, right? Because isn't it actually more like she goes and tracks down Marlowe? Because Terry just kind of screwing Marlowe, but it feels like she's the one who goes out of her way to like orchestrate bringing him into the entire.
But also,
It feels very much the killer returning to the scene of the crime. So she like, Terry fucks over Marlowe, and she's like, I wonder if I could just use him because I don't know where Roger is, and he won't ever know because he's such a dum-dum.
Yeah, I wondered though if it was she's not even really missing Roger, if she's actually trying to bring in Marlowe to hang the murder onto her husband.
Yes.
Yeah.
So she can run away with the.
So that she can run away, because as soon as she does that, she jets. Like, he goes to her house the day after her husband drowns himself, and she's like already going to Mexico.
Yeah, after Marlowe and Elaine, like, he walks by her car. Eileen, sorry. She sees him and she's like, that's weird. I wonder what that's about. She knows right there that, like, oh, we're fucked. Like,
yeah,
we're clearly found out.
I feel like a lesser movie, and I'm going to say it this way, I feel like a lesser movie would really stop to explain everything that happens in it. I feel like Altman's like, no, it's there. Like, you can figure out what happened, but I'm not going to explain it to you. It's just there's only one explanation that works if you take into account what everybody is talking about. But I'm not going to spell it out for you. When we come back, we are going to give this movie some awards. This movie deserves so many awards, and so let's get to giving it to them. How about pound for pound performance? Who delivers our best P for P, Mike?
Because in an effort to not do Gould, I won't. And so
you did it, man. Your efforts paid off.
Do you know who I think really walks the tightrope of, is this movie a joke or is it serious and cheesy, and it captures it really well, is Sterling Hayden, who plays Ernest Hemingway's Roger Wade. Man, does this guy get the tone of the movie at all times, because he is so exasperating to be around and loud and annoying. I can't imagine being friends with a big drunk with a beard.
You want this guy to be the killer so bad. You really want, and then when he dies, it feels like kind of okay, and it's like, oh, okay, so it turns out maybe he did do it.
But when the little doctor slaps him and you see him, you're like, did he get hypnotized? Like, something is broken in this man, and that's where you're like, oh no, Hayden can act his balls off. He's not just a caricature. I thought he was phenomenal.
Ryan, what do you think?
I went with the director of On Golden Pond. That movie with Henry Fonda, where he's like, I'm an old man. It's Mark Rydell.
And Mark Rydell was
Mickey Augustine. The crazy ass guy who like really made me uncomfortable because he was so tiny and had a lot to do. And in a movie with a lot of 1970s underacting, really did the 1940s Jimmy Cagney, I'm going to overact, and was threatening in a lot of the times. And then when it came time to like actually make me believe, he did.
Yeah.
Because like he fucking hit a chick with a Coke bottle.
Yeah, he kind of does an early Kaiser Soze.
Yeah.
Like, that I see this as my weakness now, and so I will attack it myself. Books, what do you think?
All right, so I'm going to have to go with Henry Gibson, who plays Dr. Veringer. I think it is so difficult to play that you're in control against people who are physically larger, but also just big presences on screen. And he does not he doesn't disappear on screen, even though he very easily could.
Yeah, he makes an intense amount of eye contact. At first, you think he's such a joke because he's like lurking around behind the counter and trying to hide, but then you realize like, no, this guy is deeply intense.
He also has that thing of like when Marlowe takes Hemingway away, he's like, I'll let you go. I know you'll be back. You know, like that's the fucked up thing about his cult is like, I know you're going to come back.
I am going to give that to Mike because I really found that author character to be the most compelling. Ryan, what do you think about director signature? What is Altman's signature here?
Oh, boy, Greg, there's so many. But I have to go with the nonstop movement of the camera because I think that Altman does this thing of, like, he is an annoying person, like the idiot savant, like the sort of, like, film class genius. But, like, as we talked about, like, we just watched Scorsese do this with the camera in the last movie that we watched in Mean Streets, and, like, it is too much.
Yeah.
Like, it was the height of too muchery. And in here, man, it was just like we're always like trying to peer. Like I found myself watching this by myself, and like there would be bushes in front of the camera, and I'd be like, I'd like go around it to find it,
for sure,
or like try to like pull back shutters because this camera stopped. Like it never stopped moving in this perfect way of like, could I like? Are you guys hanging out? Like, could I also hang out?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'm going.
And
with.
that was his idea, but when he talks about it, it's just like, I just thought that'd be.
Wouldn't that be cool?
Yeah. Books, what do you think?
I have it as his slow pan over all of the surroundings before we get to like some like when we're going up to the apartment, we see the girl's apartment and everything. That's to establish the setting and how much of an important role it plays that we are in LA and not in a different city.
That apartment complex really gets like we see all of it, and it really it's kind of sunk into the hills. It's kind of like just in the Hollywood Hills. I like that. Mike, what do you think?
Yeah, I think specifically the interrogation room scene, if you were like, you want to explain Altman to somebody, is the camera keeps moving in between the guy watching the lieutenant interrogate Marlowe, and when it's in the room with Marlowe, it is moving around opposite of the interrogation, so Marlowe's being surrounded, and then it's moving back into the guy talking shit on them, and all 3 or 4 characters are talking over each other, and it's hard to talk about Altman and not talk about everybody talking over
each other. That's one of the times it really comes forward. I have a very strong feeling that Altman would not let Eliot Gould or the other actors leave that room for a really long time until he literally kind of broke. And there's several shots in that I think are really Eliot Gould, like so sweaty and out of it and just being like, Robert, I can't do it anymore.
Which is fucking disgusting to think about now or like then, but now it's like, good movie, man.
Yeah.
That works.
Good call. It was worth it.
You did it.
A hilarious Altman story that I feel like maybe you guys know, our listeners should know, is in McCabe and Mrs. Miller, Warren Beatty is a prick who was like, no, I want 80 takes.
Yes.
And Altman's a 2-take kind of guy. And so they were fighting the whole time to the point that Altman would walk off set and leave it to his second unit director to take over. And Beatty would be like, do it again, do it again, do it again. Until the end scene when McCabe is dying in the snow. That's when Altman was like, we need to do it again. And he had Beatty in the snow for hours. And that's fucking funny.
The fucking 70s, man.
That's a great story. And Mike, I like the specificity of that scene. For a second, I thought, oh, he's already going to cringe. But no, the interrogation scene had a lot to offer. McKenna, the movies from the 70s, this is 73, 50 years ago. Surely at some point you cringed. What is your cringe moment from this movie?
I had one, and I don't think it's cringe for anybody else, but it was the moment that I was so in the movie, and then I got jarred out because Eliot Gould's character talks to himself nonstop. He's constantly mumbling. He's mumbling about surroundings. It's the moment when he wakes up in the hospital bed and he's like, oh, yes, got hit by a car, shot, or on the ground. That was it was just weird. It felt so forced, and I get that it was supposed to be forced, but it didn't gel like the other forced moments.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't talk about how Brechtian this movie's supposed to be. It really jar you out of... There's some cuts, like the Coke bottle cut, I think, to the face, and then also him getting hit by the car. They're edited in such a way where, it's not supposed to seem natural. It's supposed to seem anti-natural. Like, you are watching a movie, son.
Yeah.
Ryan.
Mike, what had you cringing, buddy?
I had a couple. I'll save one for an honorable mention. Do you know what it is? And we've talked about it a lot already. Is the opening credits and the closing credits being "Hooray for Hollywood"? Is like, hey, moron, do you not get what I'm fucking saying with this movie? Now you will. Like when it comes over the closing credits, it was just an eye roll, and I was like, fuck you, man.
All right, Ryan, what was your cringe moment?
I guess mine's similar, Mike's, but I think the whole Al Jolson thing was improvised. I read and so unnecessary, and this is not of any time. I don't think in the 40s this would have been done. I don't think in the 70s this would have been done. This was
he's very proud of that. It's his improvisation.
And I thought to rub my fingers on fingerprint ink.
One of the most shameful parts of Hollywood history.
And then just do it. And but it really doesn't lead to anywhere funny or thoughtful.
It's not funny. It's not. It doesn't really seem a commentary on racism. It seems like the character being racist. Yeah, I think that's what it's got to be. Maybe on a more literal level, the lady getting hit in the face with the bottle, the second and third time I watched this movie, but knowing it's coming, when she knocks on the door, you're like, oh, honey, turn around, go the other way.
An HM is to have to deal with this kind of security guard who forces his terrible impressions upon people. Fuck you, sir.
Loved it.
Yeah, I loved it too.
I loved it.
I love that you could get a little space for yourself by just being like, he loves this character. Just do Walter Brennan. That'll get the guy off your back a little bit. Mike, what was the best Gould one-liner? Again, not the funniest intentionally character, but there are a couple of zingers. So what one do you got?
He has some anti-zingers, but the one I really liked is the Harry, in case you lose me in traffic, this is the address where I'm going. He's like, I'm proud to have you follow me. Pats the kid on the cheek and stuff. It's like that is fucking Marlowe, man. He's just everything is a little funny to him.
Yeah, in case you lose me, here's the address where I'm going. Ryan, what do you say?
That's Scream, right? That's what's the Scream? Kevin Williamson. That's I've seen the characters. I've seen the movies. I picked what is that? Oh, it's a picture of James Madison.
Yeah,
I technically am telling the truth, and I'm not going to tell you anything more than that.
Yeah,
I feel that's sort of it's not super witty, but it is sort of his barb.
What do you say, Books?
I had the same as Mike's initially, but I do have a backup, and that's his final line where Terry calls him a loser, and he says, "I lost my cat."
Yeah.
It just
honestly, yeah, and the way that brings us all the way back to the beginning of the movie, which again is really leaning on the fact that he has to go to the store to get this cat food
at 3 a.m.
Yeah, and it's the movie takes a long time before you're are we in the action of the movie?
But he could not. He couldn't go and hunt that fucking cat down, so he had to hunt Terry down instead. If you break his heart, he'll find you. Ryan. Yeah. It's just that he couldn't find that cat.
And then how about Ryan? Let's start with you. What is the sexiest Gould moment
Oh God! Outside of a TV guide.
Outside of the TV guide cover, do yourselves a favor. If you have ever seen a picture of Eliot Gould and Grover on the cover of TV Guide,
So hot.
the sensuality just like pouring off the page it's almost too much.
There's a scene where like, and it feels like okay, remember we have to be a 1970s movie, and so Philip and Eileen are with
Come on, Eileen.
are with each other, and they are laying down on beds eating crudité. Like clearly something's about to happen. And she's like, another dried apricot, and he's like, well, I'll take that. Actually, I'll put it where I put the last one because they give me diarrhea. Like classic sexy
That is
Gould right
Ryan's kind of sexy.
But then she's like, you are rather sexy, and then he makes this face of like, you were already so ugly, bro. And then he makes the second face that like, I can't believe. It's Gould, man.
It's Gould.
It's Gould.
Books, what do you say?
I say it's when everyone else is stripping down and he's just resisting
Yeah.
and not stripping down. It's very 70s. All the men are wearing like tidy whities. It's just so trapped in that moment. But
He should have been
just
like, I got a
slow.
lot of body scars too.
Yeah, it's so slow and it's resistant, but he just keeps talking through it. And that just felt like an anti to the moment, but also it worked really well.
Yeah, it's weird how that's the way it works with men. Where if a bunch of women are standing around and one is clothed, but the other ones are in their underwear, those women are going to seem sexy. But if it's a bunch of dudes, it's this guy that's mostly
most
covered up.
clothed, that is
guy is wearing a suit. I like that. I like when you can't see their bodies that much.
so much better when they're mostly hidden.
Mike, what do you say?
There's and he like shuffles zombie like through most of the movie, but it's very towards the end. It's the last time he talks to his neighbors, and he's walking back towards his apartment, and the 5 o'clock shadow is just perfectly shaggy enough. The tie is loose, and the cigarette's like barely hanging to his mouth. And I'm like, fuck, this guy is fuckable. Like there's just something about his half being there.
Yeah,
It really hit.
that's sort of like I can barely push myself through the world. If there's a sexiness, because I think we based this in part on Nashville, where he is just smoldering the entire time, but he's
And
like
playing himself, right?
he's being an actor
Yeah.
then, and he has the confidence that Eliot Gould really has. But that's not what this character has. So I'm going to give it to Mike because he does have that disheveled sexiness. How about some recommendations? What books or TV, films, whatever, could be anything. What should we read if we like this? Mike, let's start with you. I feel like you're our detective guy, right? You're a detective
I've
story
become
guy.
one
Yeah.
because I'm old. But I think I've talked about Bosch a lot on this show.
You have
so
talked
I'm not going to
yeah.
talk about that. And maybe I've talked about this too because I love Rian Johnson. His early 2000s movie Brick, starring Joseph Gordon-Levitt as a high school detective
yeah.
who nobody likes because he refuses to not talk like a 1940s detective. It's so good, and just another like look at this genre. Isn't it fun to play with all the things you expect from the genre and twist it? It's awesome.
I love it, Ryan.
Brick.
I mean, I'm gonna go with something that like is probably not watched that much anymore. So I'm gonna go with The Big Sleep.
Oh, nice.
That is a Philip Marlowe movie that does star Bokeh. Co-written, I guess, I don't know how much, by William Faulkner. And when pressed, and Lee Brackett, the screenwriter of this movie, The Long Goodbye, was the screenwriter of The Big Sleep.
Oh, wow.
And when pressed about details about what happened in the actual movie, they were like, I don't know.
Yeah,
I have
man,
no
The Big
idea.
Sleep is twisty.
And like it doesn't matter. Like I think that this Marlowe, Bogey's Marlowe, is a lot less complicated and a lot more like, see, just like one-liners. But like that doesn't matter. The labyrinthine part, the plot doesn't matter. It's just about like watching these people go do this thing, and you can't find it anywhere right now. But it'll probably be streaming on Max soon. So The Big Sleep.
All right. McKenna?
So I have a book, and it's along
thought
the
you would.
lines. Yeah, if you like trying to figure out whether a death is a murder or a suicide or anything like that. It's Everything I Never Told You by Celeste Ng, and it's her debut novel. She has a few more that
Little Fires Everywhere.
Yeah, Little Fires Everywhere. And she has a recent one out now. But that one's
Big
her
butts,
first
small
one.
butts.
Yes. And it's great. It's kind of through the process of figuring out about this solving the mystery behind this death, you learn more about yourself story. Not comedic. I will give that warning. It's not a recommendation on the comedic side, just a recommendation on the mystery, the detective work, and the...
Recommending one book. Interesting. I'm going to be recommending 3 books.
Oh.
William Gibson's Sprawl trilogy. If this movie is neo-noir, there is like cyberpunk futurist noir. And I have just been reading these books again for like, this is like the 3rd time that I've read them. And all the ways in which it is a regular detective novel are very cool. And then all the ways in which it adds to that with this sort of like magical technology and like pushing the boundaries of virtual reality and AIs and everything. It's just very cool. And in all the ways that like detective novels tend to be cool, and then added like just a bunch of neon lights and cool hacking elements. Well, that is the awards. Those are the recommendations. When we come back, we're going to talk about how well we think this movie is going to do in the bracket, and I'm going to tell you who won this episode. Books, thank you so much for joining us as a guest. You scored 10 points, which was the least.
That's okay.
Yeah. Ryan, who is not in the room, scored 20 points. And Mike, you scored 26 points. Now, this to me felt like one that you had to have. Is that an exaggeration on my part? Like, this kind of feels like I think of you when I think of this movie.
Thank you. It's, I don't think all week I thought of that, but I think when you clicked into like, I've become the detective guy. This is the old man I'm becoming. So yeah, and I read a bunch about Altman and just went on a Marlowe kick, and I fucking love this shit. And then when it doesn't feel like work, I think that's a sign.
Yeah. It's also kind of a yoga movie, so maybe I should have won it, but I only got 2 points. I got out to a roaring start, but then I lost. The thing we have to talk about, though, is how well do we think this movie is going to do in the bracket? Because we were kind of all over the place with different takes on it. But I have to say, personally, I thought very strong movie. Very interesting, very thought-provoking, like picked its lane and stayed in it, executed fully what it was trying to do. It, to me, kind of feels like the best movie we've done so far.
It does end that it's not perfect, means we get to chew on it and think about it over the next however many weeks, and that is always a positive for a movie.
Books, you obviously haven't seen the other movies for this year, but you've been on Movie of the Year a lot.
I have.
Does this feel like one of the better movies you've watched for Movie of the Year?
Absolutely one of the better movies I've watched for Movie of the Year. I also have to say that like sometimes movies made in a certain era, I'm highly critical of some movies made in like 60s and 70s because they genuinely hold this attitude of like, we are the future now. Like they kind of, you can feel that about it. This movie does not feel that way.
Yeah.
And it feels just good in that, but it doesn't feel like this is the height of time and culture and the most society's going to progress.
Because it's kind of mocking that attitude.
Exactly.
Yeah, totally. And it just feels like a bunch of
that.
elements all coming together perfectly at the right time. I don't know. This is the one to beat for me, and I think if Ryan were here, he would say the same thing. But he found out that he lost.
Yeah,
and he got really upset. And so we hope he'll be back next week, but maybe he might not be. We still have a lot of good movies coming up in this season, and we are going to join you next week. But until then, do us a favor, would you? Keep watching them movies. All right. Yeah, that was good.